All right, so welcome to the deep dive where we put on our explorer hacks and dig into some really fascinating topics. And today we're tackling the wild world of home buying. Sometimes it can feel a bit like a jungle out there, with all the paperwork and the processes and the jargon. But fear not, because we've got a seasoned guide to help us navigate this tricky terrain. Joining us is Lori Savino, a real estate pro, who's going to help us break it all down. And the inspiration for today's deep dive is actually a document Lori shared with me, outlining an exclusive home buying experience offered by a real estate agency. And on the surface, it looks like a typical kind of sales brochure, highlighting their services and what they do. But we're going to go deeper than that, right? We're going to really unpack what a realtor does for you during this whole process. And I think you'll be surprised by some of the strategies we uncover. Like, did you know there are ways to find like off-market properties or craft an offer that's more likely to get accepted, even in a crazy competitive market? So, Lori, this document lays out a 7-stage process.
Guiding buyers from like the first consultation all the way to after they moved in, post-sale support. But before we get into each stage, I'm curious, for someone who's feeling totally overwhelmed, maybe it's their first time buying a home, what's the biggest misconception they need to ditch right from the start?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think a lot of people picture the process as very linear, like checking boxes on a list. 1, 2, 3. But it's rarely that straightforward. It's more like navigating a winding path. There are unexpected turns and bumps along the way, so being flexible and adaptable is key. And that's where having a realtor can really make a difference, someone who can adjust course with you as needed.
I love that analogy. It's not about rigidly sticking to a plan, but having the tools and the expertise to kind of roll with the punches a little bit. So let's talk about those 7 stages. The document starts with the client consultation,
Yeah.
which makes sense, right? Getting to know each other, setting expectations. But what's a pro tip you'd offer someone going into that first meeting to make sure they get the most out of it?
Well, first off, don't be shy. Come prepared with a list of questions, even if they seem basic. Really think about your must-haves versus your nice-to-haves, and, maybe even do a little research beforehand on neighborhoods or property types that you're drawn to. The more information you bring to the table, the better your realtor can tailor their guidance to your specific needs.
It's a partnership, after all, right? It's not just a one-way information dump.
Uh,
So the second stage is all about defining those wants and needs. And I think a lot of first-time buyers, they get fixated on square footage, ooh, I need a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. But what are some other factors that you encourage clients to consider that they might be overlooking?
You're so right. Square footage can be really deceiving. I always tell clients to prioritize the layout and flow of the space. Think about how the rooms connect, how you'll actually move through the house, and natural light. That's huge. A smaller home with a great layout and tons of natural light can feel way more spacious and inviting than a larger home that's like dark and boxy.
Oh, absolutely. I've definitely been in homes where the square footage on paper sounds impressive, but then you walk in and it just feels cramped or gloomy.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's those subtle details that really make a difference in how you experience a space. Okay, so you've nailed down your wants and needs. You're feeling good. Now it's time for the property search. This is where things get exciting. But what's something people should know about this stage that might surprise them, especially in today's world where everyone's glued to, Zillow and Redfin and all those online listings?
Right. Well, those websites are definitely helpful, but they're just one piece of the puzzle. Don't underestimate the power of going beyond those online portals. A realtor can tap into exclusive networks and sometimes even find off-market properties that you won't see listed anywhere online. It's like having a secret weapon in your arsenal.
Oh, that is intriguing. Tell me more about these off-market opportunities. How do you find them? Is it like some kind of real estate speakeasy, like with a secret password?
Haha, not quite. It's a bit more like detective work. Sometimes it's about knowing a seller who's thinking about selling but hasn't officially listed yet. Other times it's about reaching out to my network of other realtors who might have clients looking to sell discreetly. And sometimes it's as simple as knocking on doors in a neighborhood a buyer loves and seeing if anyone's interested in selling.
Wow, I love that. It sounds like a blend of market knowledge, networking, and good old-fashioned hustle.
Huh.
Okay, so you've unearthed some potential properties. The next stage is viewings. Any tips for making the most of those visits?
Oh, definitely. First, bring your wants and needs list with you and actually use it. It's easy to get caught up in the moment and overlook crucial details. And don't be afraid to really explore the space, open cabinets, test the water pressure, Imagine yourself actually living there.
Yeah, don't be shy. It's easy to get distracted by the staging and the pretty decor. But you need to look beyond the surface and see if it truly meets your needs. Speaking of getting practical, the next stage is offer writing. And for a lot of people, this is the most nerve-wracking part. They think they need to be like a master negotiator to succeed. How do you guide your clients through this stage and make sure they feel confident in their offer?
Well, negotiation is definitely an art, but it doesn't have to be aggressive or cutthroat. It's about understanding the market, your client's priorities, and crafting an offer that's both competitive and protects their interests.
So data is key, right? It's not about emotions or gut feelings.
Exactly. We look at comparable sales, analyze market trends, and use that information to guide our strategy.
So it's a balancing act between making a strong offer while also protecting yourself.
Right. And remember, a good offer isn't just about the price. There are other factors we consider, like contingencies, closing timelines. Those can all sweeten the deal for the seller. It's about finding that win-win scenario.
Okay, so let's talk about contingencies. The document really highlights these as a crucial part of the offer, and I think it's an area where a lot of buyers get confused. Can you break down what contingencies are and why they're so important?
Sure, contingencies are basically clauses in your offer that protect you, the buyer. They give you a way to back out of the deal under certain circumstances without losing your earnest money.
Ah, okay, so it's like having an insurance policy built into your offer.
Exactly. A common one is the home inspection contingency. So if the inspection reveals major problems, you have the option to renegotiate or walk away.
That makes a lot of sense. But I imagine there's strategy involved in which contingencies to include, which ones might be negotiable.
Absolutely. In a hot market, buyers might choose to waive certain contingencies to make their offer more appealing. But that can be risky, especially for first-time buyers. A realtor can help you weigh those pros and cons and make sure you're comfortable with the level of risk.
So it's about balancing making your offer attractive while also protecting yourself. Now, there's one more aspect of the offer writing process I found really interesting, and that's the idea of negotiating seller credits. Can you explain what those are?
Yeah, seller credits are basically concessions the seller makes that can help cover certain closing costs or even lower the purchase price a bit.
So instead of just haggling over the list price, you're looking for other creative ways to make the deal work.
Exactly. It's another tool in our negotiation toolkit.
It sounds like having that expert guidance could be so valuable. All right, Lori, we've covered a lot of ground: initial consultations, property searches, the ins and outs of offers. But the journey's not over yet, is it?
Nope, not even close. The closing process can be just as complex as everything that comes before it, sometimes even more stressful. And that's where having a realtor on your side is crucial.
And that's a perfect place to pause for now. We'll pick up right here in the next part of the deep dive, where we'll explore those final stages of the home buying journey, from navigating inspections and appraisals to that exciting moment when you finally get the keys in hand. Stay tuned.
Can't wait.
All right, so welcome back to the deep dive. We're picking up right where we left off, venturing deeper into this home buying jungle. And, before the break, we were talking with Lori Savino about, crafting that perfect offer, navigating those contingencies. But let's say, you've done all that. The offer's been accepted. Congratulations. But the journey's not over yet.
Yeah.
So, Lori, what happens next? What are some of those potential hurdles that buyers might encounter during the closing process?
Yeah, you're right. The finish line is in sight, but we still have some hurdles to clear. One of the first things that happens after the offer is accepted is the home inspection. And this is where a licensed inspector comes in and really scrutinizes the property, looking for any potential issues or red flags.
Yeah, the inspection feels like such a high-stakes moment for buyers. How do you advise your clients to approach this stage with the right mindset?
Yeah, it can definitely be nerve-wracking, but I always emphasize that the inspection is about gathering information, not necessarily looking for deal breakers, It's normal for a house to have some wear and tear, especially an older home. And the inspector's job is to identify those things so you can address them appropriately. Sometimes that means renegotiating with the seller. Sometimes it's just about, knowing what you're getting into so you can plan accordingly.
So it's not necessarily a pass or fail situation. It's more about due diligence. But what happens if the inspection does reveal some unexpected issues? Like, let's say the roof needs replacing sooner than you thought, or there are signs of water damage. What then?
Well, that's when we put our negotiation hats back on. Depending on the severity of the issues and the seller's willingness to address them, we might renegotiate the price, ask for repairs, or in some cases, we might even walk away from the deal if it's not in the buyer's best interest anymore.
Yeah, I can imagine walking away from a house after you've already, fallen in love with it. That must be so tough. How do you help your clients navigate that kind of emotional roller coaster?
It's definitely challenging, but that's where having a realtor who can provide an objective perspective is so important. It's easy to get emotionally attached to a property, but ultimately, this is a major financial decision, and sometimes walking away is the smartest choice, even if it's disappointing in the moment.
Right. Sometimes you have to be willing to walk away to protect yourself in the long run. So, okay, let's say you've gotten through the inspection, no major surprises. What's the next hurdle on the path to closing?
So the next step is the appraisal. And this is where an independent appraiser comes in and determines the fair market value of the property. It's important for the lender because they want to make sure that they're not loaning you more money than the house is actually worth.
So the appraisal is really protecting both the lender and the buyer in a way. But what happens if the appraisal comes in lower than the price you've agreed to pay?
Yeah, that can be a tricky situation. Sometimes it means going back to the negotiating table with the seller. Or the buyer might need to come up with a larger down payment to cover the difference. And in some cases, if the two sides can't reach an agreement, the deal could even fall through.
It's amazing how every stage of this process has its own complexities and challenges.
Oh,
It really makes you appreciate having an expert guide who can help you anticipate these things.
absolutely. And even beyond the inspection and the appraisal, there's just so much paperwork and legal stuff involved in closing a real estate transaction. A realtor makes sure that all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, they coordinate with the attorneys, the title company, the lender, just to keep everything on track.
It sounds like having a project manager to handle all that behind-the-scenes stuff would be a huge relief for most buyers, you know, especially when they're already dealing with so many other moving parts.
Yeah, it can be really overwhelming for sure.
So, okay, we've talked about closing, but, even after the papers are signed and the keys are in hand, the journey's not quite over, is it?
You're right, it doesn't end there. A good realtor is there to provide support even after closing, to make that transition into homeownership as smooth as possible.
I love that you brought that up. It really emphasizes the fact that this is more than just a transaction, it's a relationship. So what kind of support can buyers expect after they've closed on their new home?
It varies depending on the client's needs, but it might include things like connecting them with local service providers,
Yeah.
plumbers, electricians, things like that, or answering any questions they have as they settle in. Sometimes it's just being a sounding board as they navigate the joys and challenges of being a homeowner.
You become like a trusted advisor, almost like a real estate therapist in a way.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
So Lori, throughout this whole conversation, we've talked so much about the expertise that a realtor brings to the table, the guidance they offer. But I'm curious, what do you personally find most rewarding about this work?
For me, it's really about empowering people to make informed decisions and achieve their homeownership dreams. There's nothing more fulfilling than seeing a client's face light up when they finally get those keys in hand, knowing that I played a small part in making that happen. It's not just about the transaction, it's about helping people create a space where they can truly thrive.
That's beautifully said. It was so clear how much you care about your clients in this work. Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into the home buying journey, I want to circle back to that exclusive home buying experience that we've been talking about. What key takeaway would you leave our listeners with about this particular approach?
I think the key takeaway is that this approach really prioritizes that partnership between the realtor and the client, a partnership built on trust and transparency. It's about going above and beyond, providing that comprehensive support and guidance every step of the way. Ultimately, it's about making the home buying process as smooth and informed and successful as possible.
That's a powerful message. And to our listeners, remember, you don't have to navigate this jungle alone. There are experts out there like Lori who are passionate about helping you find your way. Before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final thought. So as you're, thinking about buying a home, or maybe you're already in the process, what are some of those aspects that you might be overlooking? Is it the importance of that due diligence during the inspection? Or maybe it's the power of negotiation, going beyond just the price. Or perhaps it's the value of that long-term relationship with a realtor who's really got your back, someone who's truly invested in your success. Lori, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise with us today. You've really, I think, demystified this process and given our listeners a lot to think about.
It was my pleasure. I love talking about real estate, and I'm always happy to help people navigate this journey. It can be exciting, it can be overwhelming, but at the end of the day, knowledge is power. The more you know, the better equipped you'll be to make those smart decisions and achieve your homeownership goals.
Those are wise words to end on. And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights into the home buying process. Remember, you don't have to go it alone. There are experts out there like Lori who are ready to guide you every step of the way. So do your research, ask questions, and don't be afraid to lean on the people who know this terrain. Happy house hunting, everyone, and we'll see you back here soon for another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, stay curious.